The wind bit at Mira's cheeks as she stared up at the jagged white crown of Mount Rainier. It looked impossibly far away, distant, cold, indifferent. 3 years ago, from a hospital bed, she had stared at a different white ceiling and thought she might never stand beneath open sky again. Back then, her world had shrunk to the steady beep of machines and the careful smiles of nurses. Stage 3 lymphoma. The words had sounded like a life sentence. Chemotherapy took her hair, her strength, and sometimes her hope. But it also revealed something unexpected, the quiet power of small steps. One lap around the hospital ward, one spoonful of soup, one sunrise watched from a narrow window. When she finally rang the brass bell signaling the end of treatment, the sound was thin but triumphant. She promised herself that if her body ever felt strong again, she would use it for something larger than fear. That promise brought her to the base of Mount Rainier at dawn, boots crunching on frost-hardened gravel. She wasn't alone. Around her stood a small team, 2 seasoned climbers, a documentary student, and her oncologist, Dr. Alvarez, who had surprised her by signing up for the ascent. They wore patches stitched with a simple phrase, "Step by step for hope." Mira's climb wasn't about conquering a mountain. It was about shining a light. For every 1,000 feet gained, donors pledged funds to support cancer screenings in underserved communities. Her story had spread online first among friends, then strangers, then survivors who wrote to her from hospital rooms across the country. They said watching her train gave them something to hold on to during long nights. The first day of climbing was grueling. The air thinned quickly, and with it came memories she hadn't expected. The ache in her legs reminded her of the bone-deep fatigue from chemotherapy. The nausea at higher altitude echoed the worst treatment days. More than once she paused, hands on her knees, heart pounding. "You can turn back," Dr. Alvarez said gently at Camp Muir, the wind snapping their tents like flags. Mira looked at the slope above them, carved with blue veins of ice. She thought about the messages she'd received about 8-year-old Theo who was starting radiation, about Nadine who had relapsed and felt too tired to fight again. "I've turned back before," Mira replied quietly, "when my body needed rest. But this time, I'm still moving." They left at 1 a.m. for the summit push, headlamps bobbing like fireflies against the vast dark. The glacier groaned beneath them. Each step required focus. Plant the axe, test the footing, breathe. Above, stars burned fiercely, uncaring and magnificent. Halfway up, a fierce windstorm rolled in, erasing the horizon. For a moment, Mira felt that old hospital panic-trapped, small, at the mercy of forces she couldn't control. Tears froze at the corners of her eyes. Then she remembered the smallest lesson she had learned during treatment. You don't have to see the whole future, just the next step. So she took it. And another. Hours later, as the storm thinned to a whisper, the summit came into view, a sweep of white rising into brilliant morning. When Mira stepped onto the top of Mount Rainier, the world opened in every direction. Clouds lay below them like an endless sea. The sun broke free, pouring gold over the ice. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She simply stood there, breathing. Dr. Alvarez placed a small flag in her gloved hand. It bore the names of donors, survivors, and those who hadn't lived to see another spring. Mira pressed it into the snow. "This is for all of us," she said, her voice carried away by the wind. By the time they descended, the fundraising total had surpassed its goal enough to fund mobile screening clinics across 3 states. News outlets picked up her story. Schools invited her to speak. But what mattered most were the letters that kept coming. One, months later, was from Theo in Portland. He had finished radiation. Enclosed was a crayon drawing of a tall mountain and a stick figure with a wide smile. I'm going to climb something someday, he had written. Maybe not a mountain, but something hard. Mira taped the drawing above her desk. She knew now that awareness wasn't just statistics or headlines. It was courage made visible. It was proof that even after the body has been broken and rebuilt, it can still carry hope uphill. And somewhere, beyond the hospital ceilings and the fear, there is always a summit waiting.